video is going to take you through AQA GCSE English Language Paper 2, Section A, particularly focusing on questions 2 and 4 and a brief look at questions 1 and 3. A quick review of the structure of the paper. This is Section A. It's called the reading section. You are required to respond to 2 extracts, unlike paper 1 where it's only 1 extract, and then you answer 4 questions on those extracts. And the questions are structured like this. Question 1 asks you to identify 4 true statements about one of the sources. That is worth 4 marks. Question 2 is a summary of the similarities or differences between the 2 sources, and that's 8 marks. Question 3 is analysis of the writer's use of language, worth 12 marks. And question 4 is a comparison of ideas and perspectives, worth 16 marks. So question 1 is about one of the extracts, question 2 is about both, question 3 is about one of them, and question 4 is about both. In terms of timings, the exam board recommend you spend an hour on Section A and 45 minutes on Section B. If that is the case, you're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes probably reading and annotating these 2 sources. That leaves you just over 1 minute per mark for writing. It may be that you want to spend a little bit longer on Section A, say an hour and 5 or an hour and 10 minutes, and then only 35 or 40 minutes on the writing question, which is question 5. That might be a better use of your time, particularly for this paper. For the purposes of this video, I'm looking at the November 2021 paper, which was about chocolate, the experiences of making and eating chocolates. So if you want to access that paper, it's available on AQA. You should be able to get hold of that. It might be useful to have that with you as you listen to this video. Question 1, I'm not going to spend very much time on. It is worth 4 marks. The one thing to say about this question, it's a little bit harder than the question 1 from paper 1. Paper 1 is list 4 things. It's quite straightforward. Paper 2 is 4 statements which are true. And on the surface it sounds very simple, and actually if you take your time it is. And I would suggest taking your time on this question because this is the easiest 4 marks in the paper. But sometimes they're just trying to trick you a little bit. They put in statements which are almost true. So just take your time to make sure you get all 4 marks for that question. It's worth doing. Question 2 is actually a tricky little question, and I always advise my students to actually leave this question till last because it's actually a hard question. It asks you to look at all of both sources, that's a lot of text, and then you've got to write a comparison, and it's only worth 8 marks. It's one of the harder questions, and it's worth the least amount of marks out of the 2, 3 and 4. So it might be one that you want to leave till last, but that's what I suggest. You might want to carry on with the suggestion of your own teacher. But it says, and this is the question from that paper, refer to source A and source B, so you can take your evidence from across both sources. The children at the cinema in source A and the children at the factory in source B have different experiences of childhood. Use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the different experiences of the children. This could be similarities or difference. Sometimes it says similarities, sometimes it says difference. So just make sure you read the question. But the key is summary. Now in the summary, unlike every other question we ask you to do in English, you do not analyse language. You don't use language devices and terminology in your answer. But you do use lots of evidence and you do build up layers of inference using verbs of inference such as suggests, implies, creates. And I'll show you an example in a moment. So you do not use language devices. You don't identify similes, metaphors, personification, zoomorphism, repetition, juxtaposition. You don't do that. And I'll show you an example now. So here's the example. When talking about the experience of eating the sweets, the writer of source A reveals that the honeycomb would shatter when bitten and the Jaffa was loaded like a cluster bomb, both of which imply that there is a harshness to consuming this confectionery, although the fact that it released a stunning explosion of flavour suggests that there is a joy and excitement to be found in that moment of pain and danger. So what I want to draw attention to here, in the opening statement, when talking about the experience of eating the sweets, I'm using the word from the question, experiences. Then I put in two different quotations, and I'm a fan in this question of using lots of quotations because you're not doing a lot of work with those quotations. I've then got both of which imply, I'm using that verb of inference, implies, suggests. And then I have one layer of inference, that there is a harshness to consuming this confectionery. But then to get to the top band of the mark scheme, you want to be adding in another layer of inference. So then I've got, although the fact that it released a stunning explosion of flavour suggests there is a joy and excitement to be found in that moment of pain and danger. Two layers of inference is what will get you to the top band of the mark scheme. Then we need to present the comparison with source B, and it asks us to look at differences. So I start source B with in contrast. I could start with however, I could start with on the other hand, but make it clear you're looking at a difference. The writer of source B presents the experience with the sweets to be very different. The fact that the sweets contained virulent poison and were covered in poisonous paint creates the idea that there is a very real danger in consuming these sweets, unlike the exciting, almost joyous danger in source A. There's my word from the question again, two quotations, then my inference, then another comparison. The experience of joy in source A is contrasted in source B as the young children who make the sweets are sitting silently and are hunched over their benches, which suggests that they are fearful and controlled, which is completely unlike the freedom of the children in source A, where the uproar was continuous, like Niagara Falls. So the key to success in this question is words from the question, verbs of inference, imply, suggests, creates the idea, comparison all the way through, and lots of quotations. And you can see all the way through, I'm building up my layers of inference, I'm constantly comparing, and I'm constantly using quotations. But there is no analysis of language. I don't mention a single language device. I don't talk about the effect of the verb explosion. I don't talk about the plosive alliteration in poisonous paint. I don't talk about the sibilance in sitting silently. That can come later for question 3. And that brings us on to question 3, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this question because this is language analysis. This is what you do all the way through your literature exams, and you also did it for question 2 in paper 1 of your language exam. So if you want to watch a video about language analysis in the language papers, go and watch my paper 1 video, which will talk you through that. But in this question, you are looking to identify language devices such as similes, metaphors, personification, repetition, hyperbole. You are looking to build up layers of analysis. Furthermore, in addition, moreover, taking this further, and you are looking to link that to the question. These are standard, detailed, analytical paragraphs which look at keywords and devices and analyse them in detail. Question 2 is a summary. Question 3 is much more detailed. So you can actually use the same quotations that you've used in question 2, but your analysis of them must be more detailed and contain terminology too. For question 3, it's a 12 marker. You're going to need to identify at least 3 quotations from the source which is named in the question. Make sure you look at the right source. At least 3 quotations, probably 4 quotations you're going to need for your 12 marks. And that brings us on to question 4, which is the most important question in section A because it's worth 16 marks. This question is a comparison of the writers, and sometimes the words in the question will be different. Sometimes it will say attitudes, sometimes it will say perspectives, sometimes it will say ideas. But you're comparing what the writers think about the subject they are writing about. Sometimes the question will ask you to look at similarities. Sometimes it will ask you to look at differences. Make sure you get that right. When you're looking at the question, highlight whether it's asking you for similarities or differences. So some useful sentence starters for this question. The writer clearly, evidently, unquestionably believes, thinks, feels, is of the opinion that, considers, wishes to convey the idea that. This is all focused on ideas and perspectives. What does the writer think and believe? So those sentence stems are really useful for this question. This is the mark scheme for question 4. And the key here, you need to do 3 things. You need to compare all the way through. You must analyse the methods, whether that's keywords or devices, and you must use a range of evidence. And by a range of evidence, I would suggest at least 3 quotations from each text for your 16 marker. So this is the question for the paper we're looking at. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different attitudes to sweets. In your answer, you could compare their different attitudes, compare the methods, and support your response with references to the text. That just strengthens what I said on the previous slide. It's about attitudes, methods, and quotations. You can use the same quotations you've used for question 3. So you may already have some language analysis which is relevant to this question. So here's a piece of text from source A. It was a slab of dense, dry honeycomb coated with chocolate. So frangible was the honeycomb that it would shatter when bitten, scattering the bright yellow shrapnel. It was like trying to eat a china vase. The honeycomb would go soft only after a day's exposure to direct sunlight. The chocolate surrounding it, however, would liquefy after only 10 minutes in a dark cinema. And you might want to pause this and actually do some analysis for yourself here. I've asked some questions. Slab, the metaphor that is used. Shatter, the verb choice. Bright yellow shrapnel, that's a metaphor. The china, like a china vase, is a simile. So you might want to look at those language devices and what do they tell us about the writer's attitude towards eating sweets. You might want to pause at this moment and have a look at that. Here's an example of what you could have written. The writer of text A is clearly of the opinion, immediately focused on writer's thoughts, feelings and attitudes, that the Jaffas are a sweet to be treasured. When he describes how you could fondle the Jaffa on your tongue, the softness of the verb choice, here I'm analysing language, conveys a feeling of care and tenderness towards the chocolate, as if to be treated with respect. Furthermore, now I'm building up my layers of analysis. The admiration that the writer has for the Jaffa is intensified when he reveals the stunning explosion of colour in your mouth. While the word explosion, I'm analysing key words, conveys something violent as if it is to be feared, by coupling it with the adjective stunning, the writer clearly feels that this is an experience to be celebrated and enjoyed. 2 pieces of evidence, analysing language, whether that's devices or keywords, and always focused on the writer's thoughts and perspectives. This is from source B now, and you might want to focus on the metaphors that are used in here, the virulent poison. You might want to focus on the plosive alliteration, for example, of coloured confectionery and poisonous paint. So you might want to pause again and do some analysis. What do these methods reveal about the writer's thoughts, feelings and perspectives towards eating the sweets? And then you could write up your comparative paragraph. If you are writing about differences, the connectives on the left are going to be useful to you. However, in contrast, on the other hand, if you're writing about similarities, make sure you use the right connectives. So you might use similarly, likewise, in the same way. And then I would set up your comparison at the start of your second paragraph. Whereas the writer of source A felt this, the writer of source B clearly thinks this. Then bring in your evidence from source B, then do your analysis just the same way. Now, when you're writing about differences, you can identify a similarity only if you find the difference within that similarity. So a sentence stem such as, even though both writers think, the writer of source B evidently believes more strongly that. So if you think they're similar, you can identify that similarity, but you must find a difference within the similarity if it's asking you to look at differences. And that's the key to the question. Comparison, examples, analyze method. I hope that's been useful. I also have a video which looks at Language Paper 2 question 5, which is your 40-mark creative writing question. You might want to go and look at that one as well if you haven't already done so.